Welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Rising podcast, journeys of descending into the mysteries and rising from the roots. I am your host, Lisa Hillier, spiritual mentor and priestess. I have guided hundreds of women through my one-to-one mentorship, online courses, and Patreon portal into the mysteries within them to rise rooted into their sovereign selves. Today I have Blake Ward on the show with me. Blake Ward is the inspiration behind Seed, the world's healthiest clothing. He started Seed from his kitchen table 10 years ago with this sewing machine he didn't know how to use, and built Seed up to one of the most iconic brands of our time. Known for organic hemp pants and ethical manufacturing, Blake shares his journey and experiences of the ups and downs as he transforms the fashion industry, one pair of pants at a time. I love this episode so much. Can't wait to dive into it with you. If you feel called, please like, share, write a review. It all helps to get these really inspiring conversations out to the world. And if you feel called to make a financial contribution to the podcast and myself, please consider joining the Patreon portal. Can't wait to dive in with you. Welcome, Blake. And to start, we're going to start with the question of what has been the journey that has led you to the work that you're offering the world today?
Wow. Beautiful question and nice to be here. The journey for me, yeah. Journey for me was I was a big yogi after university, got into yoga, and I came home wearing Lulu head to toe. And I was sitting at my kitchen table on my laptop reading an article about how polyester clothing leaches chemicals into your skin in two circumstances. You know what they are?
No.
When you get hot and when you get sweaty. I'm like, I go get hot and sweaty at yoga. Why am I wearing polyester? And so I was either going to quit yoga altogether or find something natural to do yoga in. I couldn't find anything natural out there. So I literally bought a sewing machine I didn't know how to use 10 years ago, set it up at my kitchen table, taught myself how to sew, and started Seed.
Wow. So that was 10 years ago. There was no natural clothing companies out there probably at all at that time, hey?
No, like literally, it was just over 10 years ago now. And literally, if you wanted a hemp t-shirt, you had to go to the bong shop. And it was like some brown colored, horrible fitting, extra heavy, it was just like not designed for real wear. And it was so boxy. It was like a shoebox, like the shape of it. And I'm like, there's gotta be something for athletic bodies to be doing movement in, to be athletic, to practice yoga, to hike in the mountains. Like, can we make something natural that isn't abrading or leaching into our skin, like those BPA water bottles?
Yeah.
Right. We stopped selling BPA water bottles for kids, for like all those mountain equipment co-op ones that people had. Why? Because your water would start to get chemicals in it from the plastic around it. So clothing was doing that to humans. It still is. Over 90% of clothing out there is polyester. And I just figured, not for me. I'm going to do something about it. And I started Seed, and we started using hemp and organic cotton and even merino wool in our first collections.
Yeah. And so you just taught yourself how to sew. You came up with a design and started producing it.
Pretty much. Yeah. I just started going to farmers markets, and it took me a bit to learn how to sew. I didn't even know how to thread the machine. So I ended up putting myself in one of those local sewing courses that you do in the evenings at a high school, and you learn to sew a bag, and then you move on to some pretty basic things. But that was the start. And then I just, I was so passionate about, just as the snowball began to grow, I was so passionate that I was just like, we got to do this, and I got to get better. And I would stay up till 2:30 in the morning, just like sewing. I had a day job during the day, and I would do this at night and on the weekends.
That's amazing. So what has it grown into today?
What we are today is a brand we've now had over 10,000 orders of our products. And so some orders are one item and some are multiple. So we've made an impact already, not just with making natural clothing for movement, but making it locally. I didn't want to from the start, and I still haven't sold out and started making our stuff in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, like these third world countries that if you go to the big box store in your town, you get a $5 t-shirt or a 3-pack for 15, or that stuff. It's cheap for a reason because it's made overseas. So the environmental, there's a few reasons why it's cheap and they make it overseas. The environmental, they literally just dump toxins into the riverways there because they don't have the same environmental standards that we do, but they have cheap labor, less than $1 a day in many cases. And that's how you and I can go to a big box store in our town and get this heavily discounted clothing.
Yeah. So are all of the products, they're made out of hemp? Is that right?
Yeah, we use a hemp and organic cotton blend, and our hemp is actually organic too. People love to know that. So it's organic hemp blended with organic cotton. And most of the products, like when I first launched, we had 8 or 10 items out there: shirts, shorts, tank tops, sweaters, all these things. And we've dwindled down to basically the antidote pant, which is a pair of joggers or basically hiking pants, yoga pants, and overalls. So we make pants and overalls. And that's just because when I made 8 or 10 things, people just bought the pants anyway. And so, people basically voted with their dollars, and now we just focus on what they want.
Yeah. And so hemp, what is hemp? Where do you get it locally? What does it do for the body, environmentally, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we get our hemp out of Colorado, USA. And what hemp, it's a lot of things, but one of them is it's thermoregulating. And people don't realize that thermoregulation is actually a word that came from natural properties of clothing, because you and I and the people listening might hear or see these ads on Instagram that's like thermoregulating pants. And it's somehow they're spraying synthetic pants with a synthetic chemical that gives them thermoregulation properties. I don't get it, but the true thermoregulation comes from the breathability of a fabric, of a textile. So it'll allow, so hemp, why is hemp important? Thermoregulation means it's going to handle moisture really well. If you get too sweaty, it's going to express the extra moisture out of the fabric and off your body. If you get too hot, it's going to do the same thing with heat. So it's constantly adjusting to heat and cold, just like merino wool base layers that people wear, and just like linen. But hemp is also brilliant because it was the first fire retardant clothing. It's just naturally fire retardant. It's not now, the firefighters are wearing stuff that's sprayed, their clothing sprayed with synthetics and all that. But it's the first anti-static clothing. So if you have, pets in the house, your pet hair is not going to stick to your clothes, but also just with your body, the energetic fields of the body get charged up from synthetics. And especially when you're exercising, moving in synthetic clothing, it doesn't happen with hemp. So that's a few of the properties. It's really good environmentally too, the way it grows and what happens with it after.
Is it regenerative? Like, is there a regenerative farming process with it? Do you know, with hemp? Like, is it super renewable?
Yeah, totally. So the good thing about hemp, and especially organic hemp, there's no pesticides used in the growing, herbicides. There's, it's chemical free growing, and hemp is a weed, right? That's why we call like weed. It's a weed. It grows like a weed. And so it doesn't need a lot of water. It can grow in some pretty harsh conditions, right? So it doesn't need irrigation, doesn't need fertilizers, things like that. But yeah, it's just a brilliant textile that a lot of people don't know about. And that's kind of been the benefit of Seed, is like we've been able to be the tip of the spear out here in the market and really like charge and and educating people on hemp.
Yeah. Yeah. And bringing a different type of clothing to the market where kind of fast fashion and quick and cheap is the norm, where it's like more that traditional way of creating clothing where it's made locally. There's kind of a story and threads to it. Like there's a family behind it, if that makes any sense. Like there's,
Totally.
yeah, it reminds me of that just ancestral way of living where there was trading and all that different kind of thing where people really stood behind their product and that like pride in it.
Yeah.
With like, so being a small business owner and really, staying true to your values with keeping everything local, not, farming out, all that kind of thing. Have there been challenges, especially over the past couple of years with the COVID and all of that kind of stuff, or even like earlier on in the beginning, were there big hurdles that you had to get over to really follow your dreams on this?
Totally. A lot of the challenges have been money challenges, to be honest. It takes a lot of money to do things the right way. And some people are like, you got pants that are $200, man. Like, what are you worried about money for? Or like your overalls are $300. So you got natural dye pants that are $400. And it's like, we're not sitting on a bag full of money over here. Like I've had to put my ass on the line so many times with loans or, just so we can make production runs, so we can buy the fabric. And there's been these ebbs and flows, and we're really healthy as a business in terms of the community that, I mean, like I said, we've had over 10,000 orders. Like people want this clothing. Some of the challenges behind the scenes is like, how do we make this work as a business? Because when I started, I had no business experience, and I'm just like, want to do something I'm passionate about that's going to be good for people on the planet, and didn't anticipate a lot of the growth that I have experienced.
Yeah. What have been the biggest business lessons that you've had to learn to make a business function in this world?
I think just learning that I actually need to run a business. Like I can't do this charitable thing. Like if, the person who started all of this just wanted to make great clothing for inspired people, and like I trade with chicken farmers for their eggs, and I trade with massage therapists, for massage, like kind of what you were just talking about, like the community commerce. And I was happy with this ideological world that we could just exist as small communities and like make inspiring things and healthy things for each other, all specialized in this. Somebody specializes in food, somebody specializes in building healthy homes, and we can coexist that way. The biggest challenge is like figuring out, oh shoot, how does business work and how does money work? And it works in different ways than I was wired as a human before I started.
Yeah, I think there's a belief out there in the spiritual community that you shouldn't charge well for what you're offering, and does that kind of lend itself to, like I should just be able to give away this product because it's amazing and everybody should have it?
That's how I was, honestly, at the start. And we weren't charging enough money, and some would say we're still not. There's been years where I haven't paid myself an income. I'm the hardest working person on our team. I still work till 12:30 at night, like 2 nights ago, and 10 at night. And, and I'm in there in the morning, and months go by and I don't pay myself anything, so yeah, there's challenges, of just like actually, honestly, some of it's internal too, right? Is like, how was I programmed? Like what my mother used to say, like rich people are greedy, or they did something bad to earn their money. So like subconsciously, I've got this program of like, oh, if I earn money, I'm bad. So there's been a lot of personal development.
Yeah. A lot of belief systems to break through and patterns to reconstruct. And it's like, I'd imagine it's a great way to really get to know yourself and what's going on the inside, because it's like business, relationships, everything's going to come to the surface for you to look at. and
All of it.
kind of
Yeah.
like stare right in the face. And it's like, you can either go the other way or you can meet it and keep going and grow with it. So it sounds like a powerful growing opportunity, or that it has been a powerful growth opportunity. What do people need to remember? I don't know if that's the right word, but it's like, we can buy a piece of clothing that will last like 10 years and it might cost like $500. Or we could buy 10 pieces of clothing that each cost like $10, but they're going to last a month. So what is it that's behind like a really good quality product?
Totally. Well, for example, like this shirt I'm wearing is wool. It's Pendleton, which is like an expensive brand out there. And I bought it and I've had it for years now, and it's still in great shape. I'm going to have this thing for 15 years, who knows? But it's, buy less and buy better. Or a girl, Dana, on our team, she used to do a lot of markets around the Vancouver area with seed, and I would be there with her and she would be telling people like, they grab a, item off the rack and be like, how much are these pants? And she's like, $200. And they're like, whoa. And she goes, you buy nice or you buy twice. And it's so true. And that's what seed is. We're not Walmart. We're not trying to be the cheapest product out there. We're trying to produce the best product out there. And it's going to cost whatever it costs at the end of the day. What I said when I started Seed was, we're going to make the healthiest clothes on the planet. And that's for people while they're wearing the clothing, and it's for the planet environmentally. I didn't say like some of the big box stores or some of the stores at the mall, like Gap or H&M. I didn't say we're going to make great looking, affordable clothing, or we're going to make, because then they're going to say, well, affordable clothing, how are we going to make it affordable? Well, we'll go make it in Bangladesh with slave labor, right? Or we're going to use synthetic dyes that pollute waterways. So like I said, we have a natural dye collection, $400 pants. People love them. And energetically, Ayurveda, we've heard of Ayurveda, but in India, there's a practice called Ayurveda of naturally dyeing your clothing as medicine, the energy of the medicine. And just like I talked about polyester clothing leaching chemicals into your skin, if you have medicine in your clothing and that leaches into your skin, it's actually beneficial. So that's what our natural dye collection does.
Okay. So what are natural dyes made out of?
Typically tree barks. There's like logwood is a very obvious name of a natural dye that we have a color right now called slab, which is just a cool name, but it's made with logwood or dyed with logwood. There's madder. There's a lot of different cochineal. There's a lot of different natural dyes out there. But mostly, it comes from tree barks. There's little bugs. Cochineal is literally like these little tiny bugs. We don't use that at Seed, but it's kind of like little mini ladybugs that have died and can, in the ancient world, you talk about ancestral times. We didn't have, the big factories and stuff. There was people out foraging in the forest and finding things to eat and finding things to build their homes from and finding things to make textiles from and also dye their fabrics. So when you get to natural dyes, you go back to nature in a real cool way.
Yeah. And it feels like when you're buying something that's going to have longevity, like, a product that's going to last a really long time, it's going back to nature. It's not cutting around the edges to make something easy and accessible. There's like work behind it and like craftsmanship behind it. So do you guys have a store now?
Our home base is in Cochrane, Alberta, which is just outside of Calgary. And so we have a storefront on River Avenue, which is a cute little place in town. It's kind of like industrial retail. So we have our industrial sewing machines in the back. You'll see like our big serger and single needle stitch and cover stitch and a cutting table. And our whole shipping area is in the back. And then in the front, it's our retail space. And I've plopped literally the kitchen table that I started everything on is my desk, my office desk. And I've plopped my desk up in the front retail area there. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
fun.
we're local.
And are you guys still doing farmers markets and all that kind of stuff, or is it mostly just
We've pivoted. We do in store, but honestly, it's a very low percentage of people that come in store. And if we were trying to be a really busy retail store, we would go into Calgary, or we'd be in Vancouver or Toronto, you know, like in a popular street. But we're an online business. We're e-commerce retail. And so we focus a lot on our website and just like our Instagram presence, and even digital advertising, and our community with our mailing list, so that we're connected with our community that way. That's our focus right now. And we haven't done a market in years, but man, that was a fun time. But honestly, I burnt out. I don't know if I could do them anymore.
It's a lot of traveling and stuff, probably. Hey,
the travel is so fun, but just like, how many times can you tell the same story, with people? Like for 4 years, 6 years, I would just like, people come up and they touch the clothing and they go, wow. And you share the same story about the price point, why hemp is important. And it's so inspiring at the start. And it just got to a point with me personally, like, I needed to pivot. That's why we hired people like Dana that I mentioned earlier to do our markets.
Yeah. And so did COVID affect you guys at all, or was it just?
That's why we stopped doing markets, honestly. Yeah. But it was a blessing in disguise, because when we were doing markets, there was a cap on our business. Like, you can only be at so many markets and you might meet 30 people over a weekend, or have 20 people buy your stuff over a weekend. In the online world, it's 24/7. There's people all over the world that we weren't touching that are looking for hemp clothing, or they've never heard of hemp clothing, but they'd be friggin' inspired if they ever heard about it. There's people in like all over Canada, all over the United States, and we couldn't do enough markets to get to these people. So if we really want to cause a transformation in the fashion industry by showing that you can make it locally, you can make high quality clothing that lasts naturally, we got to get to more people quicker and more efficiently than doing a market every weekend.
Yeah. So there's been there's been loads of silver linings with COVID, for sure, and that sounds like it's been a great move for you guys. What's been your biggest inspiration over these years to keep going?
Just that the job's not done. We got like, just, some of these documentaries, like if you watch in Canada, like I think CBC put out a documentary called Made in Bangladesh.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's all about the fashion, like manufacturing world in Bangladesh, and it's literally disgusting. Like, you're either throwing up crying or want to go burn your big box store down to the ground. And there's another one. What's the other documentary that inspired me a ton? Made in Bangladesh, and I'll think of it as we go here. But, some of those, like, I've always been inspired by documentaries, like, to go out, if I watch mountain films, I'm like, go and buy some climbing shoes. I'm like, I'm getting into rock climbing, or some backcountry snowboarding. I'm like, I'm going cat skiing. But when you watch like something that kind of gets you upset on the inside, and you go like, wait, like, this is happening now. It's not like this happened 30 years ago. Like, oh man, we had a terrible past, but everything's good now. It's like, no, that's literally slave labor is happening now, 2023. That inspires me. Yeah.
What are the, I guess I'll use the word dangers. I don't know if that's the right word, but the dangers of fast fashion. I think that is the right word.
The dangers to the people making it, like we did a short documentary called Seed Short Docs, and it's on our website, seedpants.com. It's just a 3-minute film, but in that I talk about why we make stuff locally, and we juxtapose that to the third world slave labor that's happening. There's literally, in our documentary, there's a picture that we got from another film, a video actually. There's a baby laying on the floor, and a mom at a sewing machine and a big pile of, I think they're like black rubber shoes. And the mom had no choice. She had to work, had to bring her baby to work. And there's just like toxic dyes coming out of the shoe pile. It's like a mountain of shoes coming out of the shoe pile by the baby. We can't believe it. You know, us people watching this likely have phones and computers, and we live in a first world country. We don't see that. We don't get a taste of that in our day to day, but yeah, it's happening.
Yeah. I remember a long time ago when I was still in university doing a speech on recycling electronics and the villages where people literally live on like the, old phones and the memory, whatever, I can't think of the word, of computers, and they're burning it all down, and they're living in these toxic communities because we're shipping all our stuff over there. Like, it's horrifying, some of the stuff that happens.
And they're cooking their food on our trash. Like the stuff that we rinse out our yogurt container and put it in the recycle bin, and we think we're a good human. And we are because our intention is pure. Yeah. But what we don't know, a lot of us, is behind the scenes. That yogurt container goes to our local recycle depot, and 90% of that stuff is shipped to third world countries.
It's crazy.
Even the textiles, right? We go and throw our like used H&M Gap t-shirts in the bin, and we're like, I'll donate that for diabetes or whatever it says on these bins. 95% of that stuff goes to third world countries. They have mountains of our shit all over their landscape. And that's why when we see like a commercial or an ad, I don't know if we're seeing them anymore, but there used to be, like, help feed the people in Africa and these benevolent things. Why are they wearing, like, how do they get a Nike thing across their t-shirt, or why have they got a Adidas track pants on? That they're not getting that stuff from their local store. It's our crap that gets shipped over there. Yeah. And so, they literally, as far as like, I haven't heard about the tech side of it, but I know that our recycling is there. There's piles of our recycling that they are burning to cook their food on. They've got like a metal grate, like us, we would go camping, create a little fire pit, put the metal grate down. Instead of using wood to burn, they're using our trash. Which highly toxic. It gets into the food. I mean, we don't even need to describe what that's all about, but it's too much.
Yeah. And, on the positive side, are people seeing an impact with choosing better clothing? Like, are we starting to see a shift in that?
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about, is like to make a difference. Yeah. Like, we're small at the scale that we are, although like we've gotten big from where we started. But for people to actually realize that they are making a difference from not shopping at the mall and shopping from a natural, locally made brand, it's monumental as far as the impact that it makes.
Yeah, it's like every pair of pants makes a difference. So it's like just making those really positive choices is creating a rippling effect on the planet for sure. Are there any documentaries that you would recommend people watch on, I don't know why regenerative farming keeps coming up for me. I mean, I love regenerative farming and all that kind of stuff, but on like fast fashion, on slow fashion, I guess that's what it's called, isn't it? Is slow fashion.
Yeah, totally. That would be the opposite of fast fashion for sure. But if you look up fast fashion documentary, that's going to show you stuff that's likely bad about the fast fashion industry. I'll remember before we stop chatting here, I'll remember the one that I'm trying to think of. Like I said, there's Made in Bangladesh is a good one. The True Cost.
Oh, okay.
The True Cost. Yeah. And that is all about the Raza Plaza. I think it was called the Raza Plaza. It's been years since I've seen it, but I've watched it a few times now. And I've actually been part of a fashion revolution YYC. So in Alberta, we were heading up like a whole fashion revolution arm that swung out of this documentary of the buildings collapsing on the garment manufacturing industry. So people sewing clothing for Walmart, like those big box stores, Superstore, whatever those brands are, right? Like George and I don't know all those brands, but they were sewing for those companies. The buildings collapsed on these workers, and the workers 2 days before had said there's cracks in the wall and the building's creaking, and the owners said, no, get back in there and keep working. Yeah. And then
wow,
a ton of deaths, thousands of deaths from that. And, you know, like you said, silver lining, if there is anything good that came of that, is a massive amount of awareness, and that we can't do that anymore. We can't have slave labor today. Like you and I wouldn't support that if we knew what was actually happening. Yeah. If we walked into Walmart and there was like that greeter there, and beside him there's a sign, and that sign shows the Raza Plaza collapsing on the workers that made that clothing, like we're like, no thanks. Yeah. I'll pay a little more for my clothing.
Yeah, I think that's a big message, is most of the things that are going on behind the scenes, if we knew about it, we wouldn't support that product. Exactly. And so the more that comes into the field, like into our awareness, we can make better choices. Yeah. That might cost a little bit more in the moment, but in the long run, they actually save us money. Like the dress I'm wearing right now, I think I've had it for 15 years. Cost me $300, but that's 15 years. Like that's crazy, you know? And so it's more thinking about that as opposed to in this moment. Do you have a, you know, because we're at kind of a pivotal time on the planet right now. It's a lot going on. Do you have a vision of where you see the world heading?
I do. I mean, because I'm so goal oriented, you know, or like I'm always vision casting, and I love the turn of the year. Like the end of December, I'm already thinking about like, okay, I got a clear calendar. Like, what am I going to create this coming year? And New Year's resolutions. I love all of that. So I used to have a vision of more of like this hippie, like commune kind of thing, where we were living off the land, foraging, hunting, like modern, right? Like our future was going back to the past in a way. And it's partly because I studied anthropology in university. Oh, and I just really love like the tribal community, small scale, like harmonious, sit by the fire at night and listen to grandpa tell stories about the land and the stars. And that's not my vision now. I actually see now, we talked about business earlier in the call, and I actually see conscious businesses coming through. You know, it's kind of like in the springtime, you see those little buds like come up, you know, and they're pushing through to try to get through the ground. I see conscious businesses that are kind of just like at that point where they're coming through at the same time as people are educated and willing to spend more money on less things, which actually over time, you have clothing for 15 years, $300, you do the math, you're actually saving money instead of going to the mall and getting some cheap stuff that you wear for a month and throw out. Yeah.
So you're seeing a lot of conscious businesses starting to sprout up.
I'm seeing that now. And that's also my hopeful vision, you know, moving forward, is that we, like me, for example, it would be inauthentic for me to go and support, I mean, what's another industry? Like just, I eat organic food, right? So it's like, for me to go out and just like eat a bunch of fast food and like support businesses that are not doing really the thing out there for all of my lifestyle choices, from the home I buy or own, the products I use in my home, So just as people, I think we're going to continue to make more conscious choices. And I'll just kind of try to land this here with this, the organic food thing. A lot of us eat organic food, or some of us have become vegan. We're doing food choices because of our awareness, what we've learned from listening to podcasts and reading books, our community. So we've become more conscious with our food choices. There's two other areas that I feel are coming. One of them's clothing, and the next one is homes, like homes and the buildings that we work in, that we're going to start choosing organic clothing, locally made clothing. We're going to start the version of organic homes. What if our home was actually healthy instead of being all these off-gassing chemicals, from the carpets to the paint on the wall and the glues and all that? So yeah, I believe it's coming, and I believe the education, just like it did with organic food and our conscious food choices, it's coming for clothing and for homes. And I'm actually getting into architectural design myself.
Do you think that's like something that you'll branch off into?
Totally. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
When I started Seed, I was 30 years old, and I wanted to do both. I wanted to do architectural design and build the world's healthiest homes. And I also wanted to start Seed. And I couldn't do both at the same. They were so big, both of them. And so I wrote down in my little goal planning thing, from age 30 to 40, I'm going to create the world's healthiest clothing. And then from 40 to 50, I'm going to create the world's healthiest homes.
Interesting. What with the world's healthiest homes? Like, is it container homes, or is it, I think I stayed in a house that the walls were made out of straw and mud. Yeah. And I think that was super healthy. So yeah, what's kind of the intro into the world's healthiest homes?
Well, we got to make it from natural things, first of all. So like the straw bale house that you stayed in, there's some hemp. I was just talking to my best friend, Mark, yesterday, and he makes hemp homes. They figured out a way to make like hemp Lego blocks, basically, and you go and stack them and make the walls of a home. So for me, though, when I say the world's healthiest homes, I'm talking about what we make it out of, but also how we make it. Like, I want to astrologically align homes, just like the pyramids in the Giza Plateau there's two, and then there's one that's kind of kinked. They're not in a straight line, those three pyramids. They're kinked because Sirius, like the star cluster, is kinked. And these pyramids are actually grounding and mirroring that back onto our earthly plane, what's in the stars. So there's energy to that. There's a wine pyramid. There's a winery in Kelowna, I believe. Yeah, it's in Kelowna because I've been there. And the gentleman that's created it has created a pyramid shape where all the wine gets made and rests before they ship it out. And it's all about the energy that gets put into the wine. So not only what we're making it out of, but how it's aligned and oriented on the planet. There's ley lines, there's earth lines, but also the third area is the shapes. You know, you can make destructive shapes that are not harmonious for earth, or for earth energies, but also human bodies. And then on the other side, you can make shapes like dome shapes. Why are we more rested in a dome than we are in a square room? So there's a whole science that's actually called biogeometry that I'm doing some courses in, to learn about how shapes are impacting humans, and especially the shapes we live in.
And so a biodome is better than a square?
I'm not going to say it's better. I mean, I'll just be straight up. I'm not an expert. I'm learning. I have I'm amped up about it. You know, I have a ton of energy to learn more. And from what I'm learning, vaulted ceilings are like a rounded ceiling, or a dome structure, or just a complete, like a yurt has a complete rounded walls, right? It's not a square. Apparently, these types of structures are biologically more aligned with how humans work. I mean, think if you and I walk out into the forest, it's beautiful, right? People go for hikes. We go to the mountains for a reason, or we go to these natural places for a reason, and we come back feeling calm, relaxed, wiped out, all of that. When we stay in a room, a home that has just a flat wall and then sharp edges, our consciousness, our eyes, our whole human evolved body doesn't really recognize that. We're used to being in these natural environments where there's twigs and sticks and grasses and wind blowing leaves. It's always dynamic. It's always moving. And there's been studies with children that when there's like a bike path that's just perfectly straight and perfectly flat paved, nobody uses it. But when there's a little like trail to school that's kind of like 2 feet wide, and it goes up and over a little hump and then past this log, and you got to duck under a tree, kids love that stuff. And you see them using that all the time.
It's interesting because I was thinking about, when I've been in like yurts or around, bell tents, we've rented bell tents to do retreats in and stuff. You do feel very different than just in these box spaces. And it's like, you think of the forest, there's everything to look at. Like there's so much beyond, far away to look at, as opposed to just these things directly in front of us. So that's really interesting how spaces can change and evolve so that they're healthier for us and more in alignment. And I love building them on the ley lines like Stonehenge and the stone circles, and having them be very intentional. That's what it feels like Seed, the clothing is super intentional. And then these homes, everything's with intention. It's not just, how can I make this the quickest, easiest, cheapest way ever? There's soul behind it. That's the word I'm looking for, soul behind it.
Totally.
How do you think the pyramids got there? Do you have any take on that?
Oh my God. I mean, I've heard like the alien, like come down and just like, I've heard, you know who Drunvalo Melchizedek is?
No.
Got a book, The Flower of Life. It's a series of books that's really interesting. His theory, well, he's sort of what are people called that channel? I mean, he channels, he's connected with whatever realm or whatever group or people that he's getting his messages from. And his message is that the pyramids were actually built from the top down.
Oh, wow.
In under a day or something. Like, it's just so out of our realm of, but it makes you think, right? Like, oh shit, well, I would think you would build it from the bottom up because that's how I was born and saw things being made. But if I was born at a different time or different level of consciousness, like in the golden age, who knows? I mean, I think, there's so much cool stuff. Like Robert Edward Grant is amazing. He's an American that's been going, he basically does, beautiful sacred geometry drawings is one of his things. He's into a ton of stuff, and then he's been going into the pyramids and studying them and having all sorts of eye-opening realizations about their construction and the harmonics of the pyramids. It doesn't just look cool, it functions. There's an energetic function to them. And I'm learning more all the time. I'm super stoked on it. Yeah.
The learning never ends here on planet Earth. There's always a million things to go on. When you were speaking to those conscious companies coming up, are there any words that you would have for any small business that's just kind of starting up right now, or conscious company? Any words of inspiration or, lessons that you've learned?
Keep going. It's going to be tough. It's going to be, there's going to be some challenges with starting your own thing. And for me, I could have quit a ton of times, whether it was money challenges or just like, I would go to markets, like farmers markets, nobody would buy a thing the whole weekend, or I'd go like on a 3-day, we have this thing called Market Collective in Calgary, and I'd be there and one person would buy 2 items because I really connected with them. And they're like, I'll spend $100 on a t-shirt. He knew what, merino wool, and he thought it was a cool gift, but there's some pretty defeating times. It's a roller coaster because there's huge breakthrough times too. When somebody buys your first item, it's like, oh my God, this is real. Like, I remember seed sold $4,000 total in our first year. And I was like, whoa, we got something here. It was proof of concept. I'm like, oh my God, like we can actually do this, and then the next year we sold 44,000 and then 98,000 the year after that. So we grew really quick, but I was pretty stoked on that. So yeah, my message is keep going and also reach out to people. I've sort of mini mentored a bunch of fashion entrepreneurs over the years where somebody just reaches out over Instagram or they send me a text because they got my number from a friend. And reach out because I'm happy to jump on a 10-minute call and, hey, where do you get your fabric from? Or how do I design clothing from scratch? Or how do, little questions like that. It's nice to have a mentor that will point you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Very helpful. What's been your biggest lesson along the way?
It's the opposite of what I just said. Don't quit, or it's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
Biggest lesson is just don't quit. Cause there's been times where it's been overwhelming and frustrating. And like I said, to be the hardest working guy on the team and not pay myself for a few years, that can be stressful on a marriage, and I know what's happening here. I know like the truth of it. And I know there's some bumps and stuff, and I know where we're going. And I know that this is a real brand, that we're doing real things. And we are an iconic brand right now in industry. Like you hear about Patagonia and whatever brands, like Oshkosh is like these kids' little overalls, right? There's iconic brands out there. We're an iconic brand that's evolving right now. And so, biggest lesson for me is don't quit, because there's some, the universe will test you, and so will the people around you when there's some stressful times.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you experience the mysteries?
With an open heart as much as possible. Yeah. I just, I close my eyes sometimes and just, think about the beauty of playing with my 1.5-year-old son. And, the mysteries, the moments that we share, together. I just experience the mysteries by staying in the moment, and reminding myself, like, there's nowhere to get to. This is it right now. When I'm with him, I put my cell phone away. I'm not trying to send texts or do any work. Like, I'm 100% there. So that's one of the ways I experience the mysteries.
Yeah. His name's Eagle, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really cute. I love that.
Thanks.
Yeah. That's a solid name, Eagle. How do you root into the self?
I've found for myself, the best way is physical practices. Like, I need to go to yoga. I need to go and work out. I heard this interesting thing recently about, picture a cheetah chasing a gazelle in the wild. That apparently that gazelle gets away 19 times out of every one time it gets caught. So I want to just see how I can relate this to myself, because that's what I'm trying to share is, if I have stressful times in my life, but I don't run right after or within 24 hours or go and do a hard ass workout right after, like, that gazelle experiences stress, but it expresses the stress at the same time through like running for its life, right? If I get in a disagreement, a heated argument, or I'm under a ton of stress with work, but I don't express, if I don't run that energy out, that just builds up and charges up, and that causes bigger problems.
Yeah. So true. Anything else you want to add to this conversation before we close?
It's been beautiful talking with you and getting to know you, and much love. Maybe we can connect again in 5 or 10 years when I got the healthiest homes on the planet going.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I'm excited to see how those evolve, and they're much needed as well. So it'll be in the show notes where everybody can reach out to you and check out Seed Pants and all that magic. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me for an episode of the Phoenix Rising podcast. Please like, share, download, subscribe if you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week for another episode on the Phoenix Rising podcast. Sending so much love.